Guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to create this wall in the easiest way possible. As usual, all the product links are in the description below, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. If you're a beginner and just trying to save some time and money, I actually recommend using 1x2 pine boards like this one. The link is in the description below because they're already cut down to the width you need them at, and you can repair any damage very easily with some wood filler. I'm just using MDF because it's what I have at home and I have a table saw, so I might as well use it to cut them down to the desired width. First things first, let's clear the wall and the surrounding space. If you have a miter box, you can bring it into this room and just cut in the room that you're working on. That way you'll save a lot of steps going up and down to your garage or outdoors or wherever you're cutting your boards. If you're new to DIYing accent walls, you may not know, but most walls are actually not completely straight or leveled. Here I'm just trying to see exactly how off my wall is, and it was only a little bit off on the far right hand side, which is completely fine. I can accommodate that in the design. I just like to know these things before I begin the wall so that I'm not getting frustrated during the installation. Next, you're going to grab a tape measure and you're going to measure the length of your wall and the width of your wall. If you want, you can take the baseboard off. I personally don't like to because I feel like it helps the room flow a little bit more. But if you want to, you totally can. Just use a pry bar and a hammer and you'll be able to get it out. It may be helpful to measure all four sides of the wall separately because, as mentioned, walls aren't always leveled, so those measurements may not coordinate properly. So what I did here is I measured the width of this wall, and I planned that I definitely want 4 columns in the wall. So I divided the width of the wall by 4 columns, which is about almost 31 inches. So that means each column will be 31 inches wide approximately. Then I took the length of the wall, which is 78.5 inches, and I divided that by 5 chevrons. So I want at least 5 lines in each column. 5 going that way, 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 and so on and so forth. This is just a messy drawing because I feel like that would look the best. I want that in an odd number. Okay, so that's just for instance. When I divided 78.5 inches by 5 herringbone lines, I got 15.7. So that means at every 15.7 inches of this line, there will be a piece of MDF or ply attached, and it will meet another 15.7 inch mark diagonally. Okay? Essentially, you want the highest point of each board to be leveled with the highest points of the adjacent boards in the neighboring column, while the lowest points of the same board meet the lowest points of the boards in the neighboring column at 45 degrees. This will ensure everything is leveled. Here I'm just cutting one piece to the length of the wall, and I'm only cutting one because I'm going to do a test fit and then I'll cut the rest of them for the framing. I'm using a sliding miter saw. You can use a miter box and a back saw. I actually prefer that so you can save multiple trips to your garage and it makes less of a mess. Once I did a test fit and I was happy with how this piece fit, I used it as a tracing guide to trace 4 other pieces, and then I cut those down to size as well. And then you want to grab your caulking gun, your No More Nails tube, and a damp rag and get started on dispensing the adhesive. So now you're going to apply a very thin amount of the No More Nails adhesive to the back of your boards. The stuff is very strong holding. If you don't have a brad nailer, you can get away with just using this. If, however, you plan to remove the wainscoting soon, I recommend using just a brad nailer because this stuff can be very tough to get off. Now you can firmly attach this board to your wall. If any of the glue does come out, just wipe it down with the damp rag before it dries. And then you can secure this in with a brad nailer if you don't have one. Don't worry, you don't necessarily need it. Here I'm just marking where the next vertical pieces will go, and as our measurements showed, they'll be at every 32 inches, so I'm just going to carefully make sure at every 32 inches I leave a mark so I know where to apply the board. Before attaching these columns, we're going to make sure they're leveled and straight using a bubble leveler so that we don't have some crooked lines going on. And with a snap of my fingers and a little bit of editing, it's done. So because I'm lazy, I'm not going to be using my measuring tape for the rest of this project. I'm just going to be marking down the cuts directly onto the MDF. I find that easier, and I find that my cuts come out a lot more precise and accurate, and I don't have to keep going to the saw. But if you want to use your measuring tape, you can. Once your pieces are cut, you can go ahead and start applying glue to them, stick them to the wall, secure them with a brad nailer if you have one, and you're going to repeat the same step on the top row of the wall as well. Now we're going to use the measurements that we had jotted down at the beginning of the video. So the length of this wall is 78.5 inches. Divided by 5 rows is about 15.7. So I'm just going to make a mark at 15.5 inches down the first column. Then I'm going to drag my speed square, which is at a 45-degree angle when it's tilted sideways, and I'm going to draw a line diagonally that will show me that this is where the next piece of MDF has to go. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side, so on the neighboring column, and that will give me my first 2 cuts. And then I'm just going to drag my speed square down 15.5 inches from that initial point that I made right now at the column and keep going all the way down until I have a design that I'm happy with. For this one, I planned 5, but my measurements accommodated another row, like a little mini herringbone, you'll see it. And that's completely fine. Don't get too obsessed with your diagram. Be flexible. All of these joints in the herringbone design are now at a 45-degree angle. So you can use your miter box or your miter saw to cut these at a 45-degree angle. And then you're just going to continue to glue and nail in every single piece. Periodically check to see if everything is level, just in case you've been moving things around a little bit. Use your leveler, use the marks that I told you about in the earlier steps, and make sure everything is in nice and securely. As I mark and cut my pieces, I like to label them. So I'll label them with, let's say for this one I do column C1, C2, C3, 4, all the way to 6. And that way once they're cut and ready to go, I can just glue them all at once and then nail them in the order, and I'm not getting confused between the pieces. Once your installation is done, you're ready to finish it. So the first step is to fill in any of the nail holes or the miter joints with wood filler if you used framing lumber, and Drydex or spackle if you used MDF. This pink stuff will turn white once it's dry. I usually wait overnight anyway. Your wood filler will be nice and firm. It won't be creamy, and you know you're ready to start sanding. Be sure to set up like a sanding cage or put away any furniture, because sanding dust does get everywhere when you sand. I'm using an Orbital Sander. If you don't have an Orbital Sander, don't worry, just use a sanding paper or a sanding block, whatever you have. Now you're going to take your time and carefully apply this acrylic silicone caulking to the seams of the wall. So anywhere where the board meets the wall, you're going to apply this to that edge, and then you're going to run your damp finger through the seam, and you're going to wipe it every time. on a damp rag, just so you get a nice clean finish. Once this dries, which takes about half an hour, you're ready to paint. I don't have a whole lot of painting tips. I'm actually not that great at it because I lack a lot of patience by the end of a project. However, you do need to tape up the perimeter, and I would lay something on the ground just in case paint splatters or anything like that. This paint color is a matte finish in Bucktrout Brown. The code is CW-180 from Benjamin Moore, and I'm using some dollar store rollers and paintbrushes because they're so affordable and I don't want to spend 10 times more than that to get the same finish. So I like to start by rolling out the majority of the wall, and then I just go in with a brush to do the detailing, let it dry a little bit, and then I go in with the second coat. You typically don't need a second coat with Benjamin Moore paint, I find, in my opinion at least, but this is a basement wall that was newly made. It hasn't been made for a very long time, so it just absorbed paint a little differently, and it absorbed a lot of paint, so I decided to do an extra coat just so that it looks nice and polished. All you have to do now is wait for your wall to dry, and you have a beautiful DIY accent wall. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.